Nothing in life is free. This is something that all adults understand, as our lives are molded and dictated by the need to make sacrifices in order to achieve what we want, to pursue our goals, and to become better, more successful people. There are few things more fundamental to understand when creating characters than necessitating the need for them to make sacrifices to achieve their ends. We've talked about suffering before, but I want to make sacrifice distinct from this, because it is clear to me that it is different, and the way we apply it yields different effects. The first important difference is that sacrifice is often voluntary. To advance our story, our hero must choose to let something they treasure go. You can think about your own life to illustrate this. Have you ever wanted to quit a bad habit? To do this, you must sacrifice the good feelings that that habit gives you, whether it's a sugar high from junk food, the endorphin rush from social media, or the numbness of alcohol. To be stronger, you must sacrifice that feeling. It can cause suffering, but suffering can just happen to our character, and we need to watch them overcome it. There is something different about seeing our character choose to give something up that is part of their life or personality in order to complete their task. Sacrifice is also distinct from suffering, in that it doesn't have to be negative. Think about any sacrifice you've seen in media, and it is almost always portrayed as a positive thing. But it is something that is defining the way we see that character too. Protagonist and antagonist both sacrifice things in the name of achieving their goal. They may not suffer immediately, but they change and grow as characters as they conduct the sacrifice, and we as the reader learn more about them and what they are willing to invest to reach the end. It's integral to raising the stakes. Think about the topics we've discussed before, such as sport or politics. 85% of footballers never go into higher education in the UK, and 32% of UK MPs get divorced while they are in office. What makes their stories so compelling and interesting is partly because of the sacrifices these people have made to serve something higher than themselves. So now that we have an idea of how sacrifice stands apart from suffering, let's define exactly what we mean when we use sacrifice in a narrative sense. Typically, a sacrifice will take the form of the character losing an important object or person to achieve an end, such as Stannis sacrificing his daughter or Amy Cadaret giving up her necklace to save the farm. We are often drawn to more dramatic examples, such as characters sacrificing their own lives to ensure a mission succeeds, and there are countless examples of this, but the principles are the same: voluntarily losing something valuable so the mission can succeed. To make a good sacrifice, you need to establish that the thing being sacrificed is actually significant to the person giving it up. It's why the ancient Romans would sacrifice their best cattle rather than a rabbit to appease their gods, because it was valuable, and that's what made the gesture potent and significant. Throughout your story, you need to show the thing's importance, and this can usually be done through dialogue if it's a character, or through character interactions with the said object. Do they look at it often? Do they run it through their hands at regular intervals, hold it close when another comes near? We can establish the importance of things rather easily by paying attention and planning ahead of time. Frodo clutches the ring. Thanos dotes on his daughter. Essentially, you need to show an investment of energy from the sacrificer into the figurative lamb. The timing of an actual sacrifice is more difficult within a story. First of all, make sure your story isn't contrived and designed too heavily around that sacrifice. Don't make it unnecessary, or people will feel manipulated. We've talked about fake-out deaths before, and they are a classic example of lazy sacrifices in many cases where death was completely unnecessary. I'm looking at you, Man of Steel, No Time to Die, and Titanic. The sacrifice has to be the only way through an obstacle, and that requires planning on your part. Don't have the bomb conveniently not work in Armageddon just so you can have the heroic death. In Rogue One, everybody dies, but this is a good example of the sacrifice being necessary and unavoidable. Or Boromir in The Lord of the Rings. His death, which still results in a failure, was heroic nonetheless because it was unavoidable. Time your sacrifices to be at pivotal moments within your story that show the growth of the character making the sacrifice. But again, they do not need to be deaths. Indiana Jones leaving the Holy Grail is a good example, Harry Potter giving up the Elder Wand, or Jon Snow sacrificing his love for Ygritte to rejoin the Night's Watch. That's the key element here. A sacrifice should represent the character growing beyond their attachment to objects or people in order to serve a higher purpose. It's why they are useful. They illustrate the character's connection to something and then show how they've evolved beyond dependence on it, or how they can understand that losing it serves a higher purpose and it's necessary for them to do that. That is what we're trying to isolate with this idea. A distinct character moment that shows the dedication to the goal they've set for themselves, reveals something deeper about them as a character, and at an even deeper level, it shows that the character is not perfect, as they cannot achieve success with all the conditions in their favour. They must lose something to get more, because they are not perfect and able to do it now. They are making an investment of giving up some form of happiness and security for long-term gain. A character who never sacrifices anything isn't interesting. The stakes are lower, the depth of the character is shallower, and we miss a huge chance to learn about the values that the character holds dear. So, the next time you're watching a film, reading a book, or writing your own story, ask yourself whether the character has lost anything to achieve their success. Is it a real loss or just a contrivance that looks like one? Do we see them regretting that decision when things don't go to plan, or hesitating to make the choice in the first place? Do they look like you and all the opportunities that you didn't take, and all the things that you've deprived yourself to get to where you are now?